Welcome to the Coaches Spotlight Podcast, the show where you'll be listening to coaches from around the globe that share their pitfalls and struggles all the way up to what made them successful in their field. Ready to catapult your coaching business past the competition? Then grab your favorite beverage and get ready to listen to meaningful conversations and learn from industry experts. Here's your host, Oliver Momeni.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Coaches Spotlight. Our next guest is on a mission to support women to honor their highest selves through coaching, speaking, and writing. Her specialty is working with women who feel stressed and exhausted, yet are still striving for more to master their mindsets for a complete inner and outer transformation that empowers them to live authentically and enjoy the lives they've created. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Meg Burton Tudman. Glad to have you on the show, Meg.
Oh, thank you so much, Oliver. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Now, we always start off the show with getting an insight from our guests with what they're specialized in and what is the outcome they guide people towards. In other words, what is your signature coaching program?
Sure. Well, I'm a certified health coach and Reiki master with a specialty in the healing power of our mindset. So I help high-achieving women transform from feeling stuck in that loop of self-sabotage, low vibes, and negativity to honoring their highest self, living authentically and in alignment, and in feeling confident in their own skin.
So if you want to know more about Meg's program, then head on over to megburtontudman.com. Now, before we move on, for those of you that are a coach or a consultant, or you want to become one and have not created your signature program yet, then you're leaving a ton of money on the table. But no worries, I got you covered. My team and I have put together a guide that teaches exactly how to design your signature program. The exercises throughout the guide will systematically help you in creating a successful program all the way up to how much to charge for it. So if you want to grab a free copy of this guide, then head on over to coachesspotlight.com/guide. That's coachesspotlight.com/guide. Which leads me to ask you to share with us a success quote or mantra and an example of how you've applied its meaning in your life.
Sure. There's so many. One of my favorites, though, is from Don Miguel Ruiz, and it's nothing other people do is because of you. It is because of themselves. And when I read that, I thought, oh my gosh, that is a major light bulb moment. I think for so long, I took things super personally. I was living to please other people and really giving my power away. And when I realized that how other people are reacting and responding is all based on them. It's their perception, it's their reality, and it has nothing to do with me. That was not only a huge pressure off of me, but also I think gave me the confidence and the, I guess, even knowledge to take back my own power and say, I can create my own reality here, and through my mindset, through my thoughts, and through my behavior, I can be responsible for what's happening for me.
Meg, that is so profound. You know, the thing is this, when we talk about how others talk about us or how we think, how they perceive us, is most often different than we see ourselves, right? Funny enough, the show is called Coaches Spotlight, but here's the thing. The spotlight is actually not on you. Mm-hmm. It's on your story, your journey, and how transparent you are to those that are listening. Now, I understand being on a podcast has a public speaking aspect to it because, you know, once the show goes live, there will be thousands listening, and that can make the one or other person nervous. However, the audience does not mind if you're nervous. They just want you to be as authentic and real as possible. And that's also why I tell everybody that comes on the show, be yourself. The more authentic you are, the more likely the listener will resonate with you. And the quote you just shared with us totally nails it.
Yeah, it's a light bulb moment. And I think to your point about, when we're public speaking or, even when we're in front of a group, we could be the very best at whatever it is that we're doing, and someone still may find a fault with it.
Yes.
And so, right, to realize that that's not us, that's them.
Yeah.
That,
totally.
and there's a part of it, I think you could take it in the direction of, well, that's so terrible. I'm doing my best. Why aren't people acknowledging me for that? But I think the flip side of that is, well, that's so freeing because I can work on, aligning my own mind, body, and soul and doing the very best I can at any given moment. And people are going to think what they're going to think, but I'm putting stuff out there that I feel is high value, and I feel good about what I'm sharing with others.
Meg, have you heard the speech from Theodore Roosevelt, the man in the arena?
Yes.
The first time I heard that speech, I was like, that is so spot on that I rewinded the video over and over again, at least a dozen of times. And as I was listening, I was thinking, wait a sec, this is exactly what happens online. We have the naysayers sitting on the sidelines, i.e. behind their computer, while we're in the arena battling our way through the unknown, i.e. the internet. Man, I can't tell you how many comments and emails I've received over the years that were just pure negative hate. And I always was thinking, it's so easy to criticize others without putting in the work themselves and making things happen, right?
Well, and I think too, the reality is nobody else has walked in your shoes. No one else has experienced things exactly the way you have. So, they may have an opinion about it, and they're entitled to that, of course, but they really don't know what it's like because we don't know what anybody else's experience is like.
So true. I mean, sure, anybody is entitled to pass on their opinion, but when it's only negative, then I just think, if you've never stepped into the arena, then I'm not really interested in your opinion, as you don't have any skin in the game to talk about something I've experienced. It's easy sitting behind the computer and leave a comment without really knowing what it meant for that person that is sharing what happened. Anyhow, Meg, share with us, what was the main reason why you started your coaching business?
I started it at the core. I knew that I wanted to be doing work that mattered. And I tried to reframe work I was doing before coaching in a number of different ways. I thought, well, this matters because it helps my clients, or this matters because, it helps a certain business or company, or I'm mentoring some newer employees, so that matters. But I always felt like I was coming up short at the end of the day and wanted to be able to, leave work for the day and say to myself, I had a positive impact here and I made a really big difference, and the work I'm doing truly matters. And I actually didn't even know that coaching was a thing, so to speak, until I chatted with a friend of mine who was doing it. And I thought, this is perfect. This is exactly what I meant to do. And it's interesting, you and I were chatting before we started recording about, some experiences that happened years and years ago. And I think everything culminates to bring us to the next step. So even though I didn't know that this was an opportunity that I could explore, as soon as I learned about it, I thought, oh yes, this is perfect. So I did it, first to make a positive impact and to help others.
Normally we don't stand up in the morning and say, today I'm going to become a coach. There's always something that builds up over time that gives us the confidence that we should consider coaching and guiding others sooner or later. But we can only do that because of the experience we have under our belt. And like you just said, everything that happens moves us to take the next step.
Yeah, some advice that I got when I first was considering going through a coaching program for certification was you're going to have to go through all of your own stuff first. You're going to have to really dig deep and, shed some layers and get to know yourself and work through your own limiting beliefs and the things that are holding you back before you really are able to be of service to others. And that's such a great point. All of your experiences are leading you towards whatever work that you're doing is. But I think also the more work that you can do on yourself, the more that you can really dig into and understand your experiences and how you're responding to things, the better off you'll be, regardless of if you're a coach or not. But certainly from a coaching perspective, that's been really helpful.
Oh, definitely. It's all about educating ourselves and thriving to be better from one year to another. Meg, was there anything holding you back from becoming a coach?
Yeah, first, as I mentioned, I didn't really even know that it was an opportunity. I think also I was on a very traditional path, kind of checking off the milestones, going to college, going to grad school, getting a job, and was taking, quite frankly, the safe route, even though it wasn't the route that I knew in my heart was meant for me. One of the things I was thinking about as I was preparing for our chat today was just because we are offered an opportunity or just because we're good at something doesn't mean that that's what we're meant to be doing. And that was a hard realization for me because I thought, well, I'm good at sales, I'm good at marketing, that must be what I'm, meant to be doing, even though it's sucking my soul dry. So I think that, tuning in and getting to know yourself is so helpful. And I didn't do that for a long time, and I didn't honor what in my heart I knew would be a better fit for me.
I love what you just said. Just because we're offered an opportunity or because we're good at something doesn't necessarily mean that it's what we're meant to be doing. Love it, love it, love it. Let's dig a little bit deeper, Meg. Is there anything you would have done differently before you began your career as a coach?
I think something that would have been really helpful is doing more information interviews with other coaches. When I first started coaching, I didn't really know how broad the coaching industry was, that really there's a coach for everything. And I think it would have helped me to narrow down my own target market and niche if I had interviewed other people in a variety of different specialties to get a feel for not only here is what other people are doing, but here are things that I'm interested in based on conversations with other people, and here are things that don't really resonate, so I can kind of cross those off my list as far as the groups and the services that I want to offer.
I like the idea with interviewing other coaches in order to be able to niche down more in finding your own target market. It's a simple tactic, but it can definitely go a long way for anybody's future. Meg, let's shift gears. Now I would like that we talk about failure.
Yeah, so important.
Take us back to a time in your life where you've experienced failure and share with us the lessons you have learned.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things that at the time I considered a failure was being fired from a job that I thought initially was my dream job. I could see myself there for a really long time, and at the beginning was really happy there. And I was mortified and so embarrassed when I was fired, and was so dedicated to the work that I was doing that I stayed an extra week and a half to wrap everything up, to be sure that, everything was as tied as neatly in a bow as possible.
Right.
And for a long time, didn't tell anyone that I had been fired, again, because of that embarrassment. It turned out to be the best thing that ever could have happened to me, because I'm not sure that I would have left and explored other opportunities on my own, even though there definitely was a pull towards that. And I think now at this point, having reframed it for myself, I wouldn't consider that a failure. I would consider it a blessing. And I think we have that power within each of us to, look at things that happen for us and say, was this really a failure? Is there something that I did wrong? Probably not, because we were, I think at any time we're doing the best that we can given the circumstances, and our best is going to look different day to day. And things happen for us to get us closer to that kind of alignment that person we're meant to be. So being able to, certainly feel what you're feeling and, go through kind of that grief when you feel like a failure or you feel like you failed, but then also step past that and say, okay, I've been given this opportunity. What can I do with it? And how can I take that forward?
Let me put it this way. The person that fired you must have been a weirdo because who stays a week longer just to make sure to wrap up a few things that were still in the air? It just shows you really cared in what you were doing, Meg. And it looks like that person who fired you had personal issues or saw you as a threat because they were not delivering in their position. But then again, people do things for strange reasons.
Well, and I think we can take that back too to that quote from Don Miguel Ruiz that we just talked about earlier. Nothing other people do is because of you. It's because of themselves. Now,
exactly.
Certainly, there was something that I did that triggered their behavior. But there's such a freedom to be able to say, this is what happened. I can frame this however I want to. And it's in my best interest to frame it in a way that serves me well, rather than a way that keeps me stuck or limits my power.
Everything happens for a reason. Now, I know some of you are going to say, that's woo-woo stuff, Oliver, but it's very true if you think about it. All the things that happened to you have most likely brought you to where you are now. Not forgetting, all the decisions you took have paved the path you're on this very moment. I know for sure a lot of people misinterpret it and say, well, come on, what kind of control do I have over my life and my path? Well, you actually have a lot of control over your life if you only would approach it in a different way than what has maybe been taught to you when you were a kid. Because when we were growing up, our parents were passing on what they got taught by their parents, right? But who knows if that was good advice? Not saying they were passing on bad advice, but we need to recalibrate what they told us and in which decade that was. Because a lot of things change as time passes, specifically in how to approach things. So things that were taught when we were kids might not apply when we become adults.
Yep. I think, there's a couple things that resonates with me for. I think one is we a lot of times feel like we're having the same experience over and over again. And when that happens for us, I do this myself, and I encourage my clients and, certainly anybody listening to think about how else can you respond when that happens. Because if you've got these experiences that are just recycling themselves, well, how can you shift it? How can you change it? It's your response that's going to shift the outcome.
Exactly.
The situation is what it is, but you've got this power to change things by shifting it. And, you can look at two different people who have the same experience, and depending on how they frame it for themselves, their reality is going to be completely different.
So true. But then again, you need to first come to the point that you see that it's possible to think about it differently. And that's why I said before, things happen for a reason. If you would have asked me 12 years ago that I would run a coaching and consulting business from my computer and meanwhile host a podcast, I would have never believed you. Why? Because all only happened because of an accident I had that took me on a journey I would have never imagined. Just a few moments ago when you said that was the best thing that could ever happen to me when being fired, I was nodding as the worst times in our lives turn out to be the best times ever. And I see a lot of people having the same thinking pattern by them saying, yeah, I'm glad I got fired, or I'm glad I had that accident, because if that wouldn't have happened, I would have kept walking through life not seeing the reality, not seeing what I should have a long time ago. And the same goes for me. Over a decade ago, I had a near-death experience, and I'm glad I did. Now, most of the time when people hear me saying that, they say, are you crazy? How can you say that? Very simple. If I wouldn't have experienced that, I most likely would have not realized I was living a life that was not for me. I was living it just as society dictates it to billions of us, living the 9-to-5 grind. I wasn't living the life I wanted to, and I was not happy, neither in my marriage and less at work, but I didn't see it, which eventually made me very sick physically, with the effect I had to be operated multiple times at my stomach, which also meant I was stranded at home for 2 years, not being able to go to my corporate job. In those 2 years, one morning I stood up and walked straight to my computer and typed in the famous words, how to make money online. My initial thought was, I need to find a way to pay all these hospital bills that were stacking up like crazy. I'm not going to get into the entire story here, but if you want to catch up on how I kinda cheated death, then head on over to the first episode of this podcast where I talk about how my online journey started in 2008. Therefore, I always say, somehow everything happens for a reason.
Yes, exactly right. And I think too, isn't it interesting? And this is certainly simplifying what happened for you, but you could have gone many different directions when you were off of work for those 2 years. You know, you could have completely crumbled and not come back as a better version of you. But instead, you know, you were compelled to type that into the search bar and look where you are now. So it's, you know, horrible things can happen for us and we still can come forward from that.
Exactly. I mean, I was highly depressive and suicidal, and if it wouldn't have been for a coach, I would have lost it. So I made a promise to myself in those days. If I could give back one day to the coaching community, I would. And that is the main reason why I launched this podcast, a dedicated platform for coaches to present themselves to the world. With that said, share with us a story, Meg, when you had an aha moment. Take us back in time and talk about the steps you took to turn that aha moment into success.
Sure. I've had so many. And as I was thinking about this question before we started recording, one of the things that was major for me, and that happened years and years ago, it was after I had started meditating and had a fairly consistent meditation practice. And I remember clear as day, as if it happened a minute ago, standing in my kitchen in a house I used to live in and thinking to myself, I am about to freak out. Now, I can't tell you what I was, upset about or what I was about to freak out about. That has slipped my mind. But I do remember standing there feeling like I'm about to freak out and then thinking, hang on, I have a choice about how I respond to this. And even in that moment, I thought, holy cow, that has never happened for me before. I've never been able to, pause and consciously say, wait a minute, I do have control here. I do have the power to decide how I'm going to respond, what my next step is going to be, what the next thought I chase is going to be. That transformation of moving from reaction to responding has been invaluable for me. The power of the pause and then the power of making a conscious choice about what my next step is going to be has just been so helpful in every area of my life.
Isn't it funny how much control we actually have without even thinking about it?
Yes, it's wild.
Yeah.
It's totally wild.
The best example I can give is when we're angry or upset about something, we tend to pull it through way longer than needed. Something like, I'm angry now, so I gotta pull it through to the end, being all stuck up, and I need to look all angry so others around me notice I'm dangerous, especially if I know I'm wrong. Fact of the matter is, we can change our mental state in an instant, but we tend not to because we have been programmed that in certain situations we should behave like this or like that. However, at the end of the day, it all depends if it's worth your while for being angry in the first place.
Yes. Oh, that's so important. I think determining what's worth your energy and what isn't that's really empowering and important. And I think too, you do have that power and you can still feel angry and process the anger and then move forward. I think to your point where we kind of put ourselves in a not so helpful place is when we stay stuck in that anger. And, using your words, we take it to the very end, that we can switch it off essentially by, just making the processing piece of it a little more efficient.
Totally. I agree 100%. It just depends when that inner voice kicks in and makes you aware in order to let go or just calm down quicker because that person did not mean it that way. If we look at road rage, if someone is speeding or cutting you, you don't know why that person is doing that. The first reaction is, hey, what the... But maybe that person just got a call from a hospital and was told one of their loved ones only had an hour to live. We don't always know why people do what they do, and it's also not for us to decide how that person should be punished for their actions, right?
I think so often, for me, anger used to be my default emotion because it was the easiest one to express.
Right.
I think anger, though, is often hiding something deeper. So if you can, when you're feeling angry, dig a little bit and tune inward and notice, how am I really feeling? Is anger the root or is there something else going on?
I would say the biggest trigger that ignites false anger is not being satisfied with ourselves, let it be in our personal or professional life. But that is a total different topic. Let's talk more about coaching, Meg. What do you believe is the one common myth about being a coach that you want to debunk?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that clients and coaches need to be a vibrational match. I think just because you are, right? Just because you're a phenomenal coach doesn't mean that everybody is going to be the right fit for you, and that you're going to be the right fit for, all of the people who would consider working with you. So I think that vibrational match is important. I also think it's important to recognize that it's the client who's doing the transformation. The coach is there to help, to hold accountable, to, coach, obviously. But the client has to be willing and ready to be inspired to be inspired to transform. And even the best coaches in the world, you can't change someone else. They're going to change themselves, but you're there to support them as a coach.
Well, that's a mic drop right there, that's for sure. You just said something that made me rethink how to look at having rapport with a prospect. You said a vibrational match. Love it. When we talk about that it's essential having rapport with the prospect before we talk about our program, well, having a vibrational match pinpoints what kind of relationship people should have with coaching together. That said, we need to understand where that starts. Technically, all starts with going through their application before the strategy call takes place. And then we continue looking for signs during the call that they are a good fit. And like you perfectly laid out, Meg, a prospect needs to be ready and wanting to be inspired to reach the transformation they desire. Otherwise, they won't put in the work. Now, it took a while until I could read between the lines if I should take on the one or other person. But one thing is for sure, my gut feeling never failed me. If I don't have the feeling on the first call that I can have a beer or a glass of wine with that person, then I don't take them on as a client. I actually see all my coachees as partners. I try not to use the word client as I believe it's a very impersonal word. Because if I'm guiding someone to transform something about their life, then I believe I'm in a partnership with them. If I get excited before I get on a call with a client, then I know I chose the right person to work with. There is nothing worse than getting ready to get on a call, but you're like, oh man, I don't really feel like talking with this person. If that ever happens, well, then you got yourself the wrong client. If you're not excited to get on a coaching call, then something isn't right. And it all falls back to what you already said, Meg, and that was not having the vibrational match. Now, does it mean the prospect is a bad person? No, of course not. But we are just on different wavelengths, and it would be better not to work together, right?
Right. What's the expense, so to speak? What's the toll that it takes on your own energy, your own being? Yes, I completely agree with that. I think too, that match is not necessarily a reflection on either person. It doesn't mean that, the coach is no good or the client is no good. It's not about good or bad or right or wrong. It's just you are not a good fit for each other.
Exactly.
And I think, you can use the mindset piece of it and say, okay, every no gets me closer to a yes.
Sure.
Or every person who, I decide is not a good fit, that then opens up space for someone who is a good fit, rather than really struggling to make something work that is never going to work.
Exactly. Meg, do you see it as a requirement being certified as a coach, or do you think people can start their coaching business and get certified later on?
I find the certification piece helpful. I'm proud to be certified. I think with that being said, though, what is curious right now, at least in the United States, there is no kind of central entity for coaches. So being certified can mean a lot of different things because each program is a little bit different. So I think, from a client perspective, do your research on who you're considering working with and, get a feel for what their credentials are, but also for what their experience has been. Because I think, like you and I chatted before we started recording, your experience is going to be really helpful as a coach in how you guide people and, what you're able, I think, to understand wholeheartedly about, what someone else might be going through. So I would love to see, something more centralized so that there was kind of a level playing field. That I think is beneficial for clients, not so much for coaches themselves. But I found it helpful. I think, can you coach without it? Sure, but I think that's a decision that a client is going to need to make for him or herself.
So true. And we should not forget, just getting certified does not make you a better coach.
Absolutely.
You need to have skin in the game to coach others. That said, everybody talks about getting certified, but what they all forget is the prospect has no clue what it means being certified by ICF or any other organization. They don't know what all those letters and abbreviations at the end of someone's name mean. What they do know is if you give them the certainty that you can get them to where they want to be. One thing is for sure, no certification is going to get anybody magically new clients. Did you know 87% of coaches or consultants from around the globe go out of business in their first year? And the main reason why they go out of business is because they didn't figure out how to generate a steady stream of new clients. Therefore, my team and I have created a workshop that outlines exactly what we do to generate a consistent stream of new clients month in, month out for our business and for our clients. So if you're a coach or consultant and you're committed to changing more lives with your expertise, then I encourage you to register for the free masterclass. Just imagine to never wonder where your next clients are going to come from next month. And all you need to do to make that a reality is head over to clientsindroves.com. That's clientsindroves.com and register for the free training. Meg, are you ready for the Thunder Round?
Yes, I'm excited for this.
If you could step into my shoes, what would you have asked yourself that I didn't, and what would the answer be to that question?
Practice what you preach, and I think also take care of yourself. This applies really to everybody, but especially to coaches. You can't give if you are completely burned out or burning the candle at both ends or not taking care of yourself. So be sure that those practices are in place and strong so that you're able to show up for your clients as the best version of you and not a version that behind the scenes is really struggling to take care of themselves.
If you could go back in time and meet the 20-year-old Meg, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, so much. I think get to know myself, to really tune in and get clear about what I love, what lights up my soul, and then to honor that. I think for so long I was living for other people. I was living, other people's dreams and what they thought the next step would be, rather than tuning in and getting clear and honoring what it was that I truly wanted at my heart. And I think also get out of my own way. I think I self-sabotaged for many years, and that would have been helpful advice in my 20s.
What is one thing most people don't know about you?
I was actually a French major in college, and as a result of that, and probably even before, I love anything that has to do with France.
If you could meet one person you have not met yet, what would you ask them, or what would you want to know from them?
Oh, I think that's such a great question. There's so many current and past who I'd love to meet. I think one in particular is Brené Brown. Her work has really been inspiring to me. And I would love to know from her what gave her the confidence to really go against the tide and to not give up her authenticity. She talks a little bit about it in a number of books, but I would love to just have that face-to-face connection and learn from her, on those darker days, what gave you that spark to keep moving forward in that area.
What is the best advice you have ever received?
To be yourself and breathe deeply.
What is your favorite book and why?
The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. That quote that I shared earlier is from that book, and that was a game changer for me.
Then let's wrap up this podcast with the last question, and then we'll say goodbye.
Sure.
Who do you specifically work with, and who should contact you if they want to work with you? Basically, who is your ideal client?
I am so happy to work with high-achieving women who feel stressed and exhausted, yet are still striving for more, to master their mindset for that complete inner and outer transformation that empowers them to live authentically and actually enjoy the lives that they've created for themselves.
So if you want to connect with Meg, head on over to megburtontudman.com or visit coachesspotlight.com and type Meg in the search bar, and you'll find the show notes to this episode and all the links that lead to Meg. Now, we have invited Meg to come back on the show in a few weeks, where she's going to hold a mini masterclass and talk about how to overcome stress with using the power of meditation. So if you're interested to learn about this topic, you definitely want to subscribe so you get a notification when that show goes live. With that said, thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Meg, it was a real pleasure having you on the show, and I'm looking forward in talking with you soon.
The pleasure was all mine, Oliver. Thank you so much. Sending so much light and love to you and to everybody listening.
Thank you for tuning in to the Coaches Spotlight podcast. If you liked the show, then please make sure to rate us, leave a review, and subscribe. We appreciate your support. See you next time.